Have you ever stopped to think how a boy from a simple neighborhood in Buenos Aires managed to become one of the most influential figures on the planet? This is the story of Jorge Mario Bergoglio, or, as the world knows him today, Pope Francis. And believe me, his path to the Vatican is far more surprising than it seems. From a very young age, Jorge carried something different in his eyes. While other boys dreamed of cars, money, and adventures, he was captivated by the simple things. The smell of fresh bread from the corner bakery. The sound of conversations during Sunday Mass. The human warmth of Argentina's busy streets. The son of Italian immigrants, he grew up in a modest home. No luxuries, no excesses, but never lacking the essentials: faith, love, and purpose. But here's what few people know. Before he heard the call to religious life, Jorge dreamed of becoming a chemist. Yes, a chemist. He studied, he worked, and he imagined himself pursuing a scientific career. A brilliant young man, but also extremely shy. In a little story that few tell, he once asked a girl out, and she said no. Tough, right? Maybe. It was in that kind of silent pain that a new door began to open. At the age of 21, a severe pneumonia almost took his life. During his hospitalization, alone, fragile, connected to tubes and prayers, Jorge had an experience he describes as a direct encounter with God. Something that changed everything. It wasn't a voice from the sky, it was more like an internal whisper that became impossible to ignore. And here comes the first twist. Even after that transformative experience, he hesitated. He questioned. He resisted. It wasn't a magical overnight decision. And that's where one of the greatest truths about spiritual leaders lies. They feel fear too. They doubt too. But they choose to move forward anyway. Jorge entered the Jesuit seminary and found his true calling: to serve. Not to command. Not to control. To serve. And real life is not a feel-good movie. Even within the church, he faced criticism, suspicion, and even internal exile. As provincial of the Jesuits in Argentina during the military dictatorship, he made controversial decisions that, to this day, spark heated debates. He himself admits, he made mistakes. And that vulnerability, that courage to admit his failures, became one of his greatest strengths. Have you ever stopped to think why most leaders try to hide their mistakes? Pope Francis did the opposite. He exposed his scars. And by doing so, built bridges where others only saw walls. Decades went by. Jorge became Archbishop of Buenos Aires, then Cardinal. Always riding the subway, cooking his own meals, visiting the slums and embracing the forgotten. While many cared about status, he cultivated presence. While others chased recognition, he chased meaning. And then, March 13th, 2013. The world watched in suspense as white smoke rose over the Vatican. A new pope had been elected. When Jorge Mario Bergoglio stepped onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, something unexpected happened. He didn't smile immediately. He seemed small, human. His eyes looked not like someone holding a trophy. Instead of delivering a triumphant speech, he asked the crowd to pray for him before anything else. Can you imagine the courage it takes, in front of billions of eyes, to admit that you need help? From that moment, Pope Francis began breaking a series of traditions. He chose a name never used before. In honor of Saint Francis of Assisi, a symbol of poverty, humility, and love for all creatures. He refused the luxurious papal apartments and chose to live in a modest room at Casa Santa Marta. He wore worn-out shoes, declined armored cars, and spoke openly about corruption within the church. And here's a fact that few mention. Within less than 3 years of his papacy, public trust in the Catholic Church increased by over 20%. According to Pew Research Center, not because he was perfect, but because he was real. But not everything was smooth. With his progressive views on social issues, Pope Francis faced fierce resistance from conservative sectors inside and outside the church. Still, he didn't back down. He continued to speak about inclusion, mercy, and the importance of embracing human diversity. If you could ask Pope Francis one question, what would it be? I think, deep down, the question we all want to ask is, how do you keep hope alive in such a broken world? And maybe his answer is found more in actions than in words. In small gestures, in unexpected visits to refugee camps, in anonymous phone calls to grieving families, in every glance, in every silent hug. He seems to say, you are not alone. Now, if there's one pattern that defines his entire journey, it's this. True greatness is born from humility, not from power. It's easy to look at Pope Francis today and forget about the frail boy from Buenos Aires, the young man who cleaned laboratory floors, the sick seminarian who almost gave up, the forgotten cardinal walking the halls of Rome. He's living proof that you don't have to be born into privilege. You don't have to be the strongest, the most famous, or the most charismatic to change the world. You just have to choose, every single day, to be faithful to what pulses inside your heart. And before we finish, let me leave you with one last question. What if the thing you fear the most is exactly what will reveal your true mission in this world? If this story touched you in any way, take a deep breath. Feel that strength inside you. And remember, even the smallest gesture, when done with love, can change everything.